and you don't want or need to do something different than you can do otherwise. In other words, you want to employ some kind of photographic content to your work. So when you want to bring in an Illustrator file into Photoshop, you want to make sure you don't just save it as an Illustrator file, but rather you go export, file export. And here I'm going to save this as, I have forgotten how to read. There it is, Photoshop PSD. All right, so it's actually an Illustrator file that's getting saved as a Photoshop file, which is rather interesting concept there. So I'm going to click export, and here's where, because it's vector, I could make it a billboard size if I needed it to be. I could make this other size. I could put this as 1,000 ppi if I needed to print a gigantic for a stage set. I would need that number to be very high. But if I'm just putting it in a newspaper, I need this at about 100. If I'm printing it on my home printer and I want something decent, I might even put it up to 250. So I'm going to do it at 250 because I might want to print this. So now it wrote the Photoshop file, and when I go over to Photoshop and I go to open, okay, and here it is, and I click open. If we take a look at the layers panel here, it tells us symbol, and it made this into a group. And if I select this group and I do layer ungroup, doesn't want to ungroup. Bad and wrong. Does not make me happy. Where is my text? What did, oh, okay, I'm okay now. Whew. I just had a moment. I'm sorry. It started out early today. I was like, what happened to all my pieces? All right, they're all there, so life is good. So everything worked fine. It exported it out exactly how I would expect it to be, which is it took each element and it made it its own little Photoshop layer, which is a really cool, nice thing of it to do for me. Insofar as other techniques I could then do in Photoshop that I couldn't do in Illustrator, such as putting a photograph in part of this, I'm going to show you a little trick now. All right, so I'm going to move the layers panel up, and I'm going to come back down here to this group, which is my sun group. Perfect. Love it. And I'm going to duplicate this because I don't want to mess up the first one. So now I have a one safekeeping one and one I'm going to mess it up one. Okay. With the mess it up one, the new one selected, I'm going to go under selection and I'm going to do load selection. And you'll see that there's a thing that comes up when I do that called group. That's the name of this layer, group copy. That's what this means, group copy transparency. So it's recognizing that there is transparent area in this layer and only selecting the rays. It's not selecting the background. Because of the pixels, it knows that, essentially. All right, you with me? Does that make sense? Is that totally foreign to somebody and need a little more explanation? You good? You promise me? All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hide the paint of that layer, and I still have the selection there. And then it's probably a good idea, so you have it for later. You can go select and do save selection. And I'll call this sun. And now if you look under window at the channels palette, you will see there's a thing in here called sun that I just made. Are you guys, anybody familiar with using alpha channels in Photoshop? Okay. Anybody taking my Photoshop class starting on Monday? One person. Well, that's going to be great. We're going to do some Photoshop. Okay, so this is an alpha channel. So what that means is if I deselect this, I can turn this on like a stencil. So if I take a piece of paper and I cut out a letter with an X-Acto knife and I put that on the sidewalk and I spray it with paint, that's a stencil. That's the same thing as an alpha channel is. So this was a way of me taking an existing part of the design and saving it to use in the design in a completely new way. So this is called channels. The actual layers of the file are separate from the channels. This is sort of a strange metaphor that Photoshop uses, but the layers are essentially really parts of your design. And your channels are ways that you could paint your design with those shapes. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and hide all the other layers here. Now I have no layers showing, and in fact, I'm going to close up this group and click away and create a brand new layer here that's not in any of those groups. Hopefully I'm sticking it there. All right, then I'm going to go select, load selection, and I'm going to go to the sun selection and basically evoke the sun selection. So I could paint it, which I could do something, just like what I had in Illustrator, but in Photoshop I could give it some kind of a orange, red theme. But that's not what I decided to come to Photoshop for. I decided to come to Photoshop so I could do something here I can't do in Illustrator. Right? I could do that or some other thing here, but I'm going to undo. Undo, undo. So now I just have the selection going. And I'm going to go ahead and open up a file. I'm going to go Command O, and from my desktop I have saved a bunch of different textures of surprising things. I don't know exactly how this is going to come out, but I just wanted to show you what I'm thinking of. So for your texture here, I'm going to use this one called Old Wood Plank and click Open. And I get this new file, and I'm going to select all, and I'm going to copy it. So that was select all and edit copy. Open this file. I can go back to Window and switch back to my own PSD file. And that is selected, and I can go Edit, Paste, Special, Paste Into. And what this is going to do is create an alpha channel or an alpha mask. So I've now pasted my photo into this mask. All right. That's a pretty cool thing. So I'll show you again with another layer here, something that you can do. So I'll go back to my group here, and I'll turn on my ohm, part of my ohm symbol. And in fact, I'm going to make these be one piece. So to do that in Photoshop, I will go and choose Merge Down. Turn that on here. Try that again, Merge Down. All right, now this is one piece. And again, I can make this into a selection. I can go Select, Load Selection, and it'll be Path, Transparency. That's just some weird name that it got when it got exported. I don't have to keep that name. And there are the little edges, right? And then I can go Select, Save Selection. So making alpha channels from a drawing that you create in Illustrator is a way to take an existing piece of artwork and completely transform it. And then again, I'm going to go get another image that I've already saved. I'm going to get this one called Droplets and select all, which is select all, and edit copy. Command A, Command C. I'll close this file. And this is still selected, so I'm going to go Edit, Paste Special. All right, I don't have a new layer. I better make my new layer. Whew. All right, there we go. Edit, Paste Special, Paste Into. Boom. So that's exciting stuff. All right. Now you have another trick in your arsenal that you can use to create from. Photoshop also has effects. As you noticed, Illustrator, we had that drop shadow effect. I could use that drop shadow effect or not. I can drop a color behind here, go very down towards the bottom. And when you select a layer in Illustrator or Photoshop, especially in Photoshop, when you select a layer and then you add a layer, it goes right on top of the last layer you selected. So that's where it is. It's right on top of that one. So if I want it behind the drop shadow, I have to put it behind the drop shadow. Otherwise, it's going to cover it up. Okay, so there's not a lot happening there right now. And I'm going to just do one more here. I'm going to do something trippy, okay? All right, so I'm going to go and I'm going to get a texture here of wrinkled paper. Texture of folded, wrinkled paper. Got it. And that'll do. Thank you for thinking for me, Internet. All right, so this is the one I want. Great. I'm going to take this image. Control-click on it and save image as. I generally like to rename these things. Otherwise, I have no idea what these names mean. And I'll call this one wrinkled paper. Paper. That is the original spelling. All right. Great. And then I'm going to get one more item here and show you another technique. So this is going to be a basic Shiva statue. My fingers are all over the place tonight. And I'm going to go with this guy. This is the guy, all right? I hope this is some helpful stuff for you. I'm copying that image even though it has a stock mark in it. And I'm going to come over to my work. And I want to show you something about this tool, which is a crop tool, which is that one of the things this tool is it'll do is it let you make your canvas bigger, not just smaller. And then I'm going to paste that artwork, which is very tiny, but I'm not really too worried because of what I'm going to do to it. Right, so I'm going to go Command-T, and this video is going to need to be cut. I will cut it into 2 pieces, and I'll slide this guy over to there. And then again, I'm going to go to the crop tool. So it's going to ask me if I want to apply my transform, meaning the stretching of the Shiva image. And yes, I did. And next, I will go and get the paper. So I'm going to go Command period to close that panel, and Command O to get the wrinkled paper image. Here we go. All right, with the wrinkled paper image, I'm going to turn it to a brown tone. This is going to be Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and click the Colorize button. And I'm going to make this kind of a more intense, sort of an orangey, darker color than it was. Completely different thing now. And I'm going to throw in some grain. I'm going to go Filter, Pixelate, and I'm going to make a little bit of a grain on it so it's not so smooth. And I'm going to do Add Noise, Add Noise. And you can see what this does is it'll really grain things up, or just add a little bit of this noise. Okay, turn this Gaussian thing on or off. It doesn't really matter right now. Uniform is changing the color a lot. I'm gonna go with the uniform. I think it looks a little more even. All right. Now with that in place, I'm gonna select it, Command A, or select all, and copy it, edit copy, and switch back to this thing here. Making sure that I'm towards the top of the stack. You know, I was talking about making a layer where you know where it's going. I want to make sure that this layer goes above this, but below the shadow. So I'm selecting that layer and adding a new layer and pasting. Yes, that is what I meant to do. Perfect. So I'm going to move this over a little bit, and I'm going to change the setting on it. And the setting I'm going to change is, this is the thing, the whole point of this is, check this out. If you have never worked with blend settings or blending modes, what they will allow you to do is turn your images radically into different images. There are 3 main blending modes. There's the darkening, the lightening, and the contrast. These ones are subtractive modes, and this one is a specialty mode. But these are the really main ones: darkening, lightening, and contrast. And the one I would probably choose here is overlay. And when I overlay that and zoom in here, you can see it's kind of made this look like folded paper. If I come and let me hide that layer and select this layer and remove the color from it, or change the color in it again with this tool I've already shown you, which is the really main one, it's Adjustments, Hue Saturation, right? You remember this? And I'm going to bump up the saturation, and now when I turn this on, and let's bump up the contrast on this. Right, so it's completely transforming this image. Stretch this thing. So if you are thinking in terms of your mood board, the elements of things that you're designing, I hope that you are now, and if you are not, collecting the pieces and parts that you need for your project. What are your fonts? Make a list of what are the fonts that you're using. What are the key design elements that you need or want. When you find your pieces and parts, you need a to-do list of actually what it is that you want to do to the things that you're changing. And then finally, do you have or need some kind of help executing that? So I do want your questions about your procedure. I think that the more I know about what you're doing, which is where we're going to delve in just a few minutes, the more I'll be able to give you some more powerful direction. But I'd like to kind of just make a shift now.